Thank you very much, Madam General Secretary. Dean Frank Marshall, President of the Women's League, members of the Executive Council, members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker of the House, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all say how happy I am to be here. And I've had countless reasons in the past few months, like many of you would have, to be proud of this Democratic Labour Party and to consider myself leader. The only concern I have is the expression used by the General Secretary about the Gamaliels of the party. When I left school in a long time ago, the end of the 1970s, my headmaster wrote on my report, "I adopt the Gamaliel policy." That's all he wrote, and I didn't really know what it meant. And I kind of fooled around with the report for a while until I could go and discover who this Gamaliel was. So the expression, the name Gamaliel, and even the expression or the thought of Gamaliel always conjures up my memories of this fear that he was actually saying something adverse about me, until I discovered that he felt that I had sat at his feet and I should therefore produce something of worth. Thankfully I did. The resounding victory on January 15, 2008, which ended almost a 15-year sojourn for this party in what is commonly called as the political wilderness, ranks highest among the reasons why I am happy and feel proud to be a member of this party. But tonight's event is a strong contender for the second. Next Thursday, Sir James Tudor, were he alive, would be 80 years of age. And on occasions like this, I feel honored to lead the Democratic Labour Party, not simply because we are the party in office, but more so because we are one of the few political parties throughout the region that has a vision for national development that is actually grounded in a clearly defined philosophy and manifested in the activities that are part of its agenda. And I think Sir James Tudor had a very significant role to play in the way this party's activities were structured and developed. And certainly when I joined the party as a young person, that the importance that we attach to the formal structures of the party in rebuilding the institution is something that I admired. I actually first came to this headquarters to attend a session of the Academy of Politics sometime in early 1978 when my mother was asked to address the Academy. In those days we used to meet in the room in the front, which is now the office, and there were people who came regularly, even though we were in opposition, to participate in the meetings of the Academy. It was then led by the late Dayton Griffith, who was its first principal and who was a very strict task master. But at that time the party was going through a lot of ideological wrangling, good wrangling, not negative wrangling, about exactly where we stood, whether we were in fact a democratic socialist party, whether what the word development meant in the context of Barbados. And if you look through the history of the party and go to the public library, you'll see some very important lectures that took place here, both under the late Dayton Griffith and then subsequent to that under the late Sir James Cliviston King, particularly a booklet called Social Problems We Face, which dissected some of the key themes and concerns that we had at that time. So the Academy of Politics is what birthed my interest and support for and work within the Democratic Labour Party, and it was that institution that introduced me to many of our stalwarts, certainly our older party members who shall remain nameless tonight, since they might not want to be placed in that category, but who were regular attendees like Astor B. Watts and Marjorie Lashley and like Cyril Walker. I can think of so many others, along with what one might consider to be Young Turks, who were members of the Academy of Politics, coming from the Young Democrats, coming from the Women's League, coming from other organizations. So my suggestion to you tonight that our Democratic Labour Party is no ordinary garden variety Caribbean political party is not a flippant statement, but one that reflects a careful consideration of what I know from my readings and what I've also gleaned from almost 30 years in active politics. And this experience has convinced me that the Democratic Labour Party is in a class by itself where political parties are concerned. And in the course of my remarks tonight, I believe you'll begin to understand the extent to which we are different. And a good place for any discussion to begin on Caribbean political parties would be the writings of that noted Caribbean scholar C.L.R. James. And as those of you who are older than me would be aware, James wrote one of the first treatises on the Caribbean political party, and he was highly critical of such institutions, largely because he was at the time reflecting on the very hastily put together People's National Movement in Trinidad and Tobago, which was more concerned in his view with government than party development at that time. And James's comments are still relevant and indeed profound close to 50 years later. And what he said about the party was this: that the party does not merely convey the ideas, actions, and projects of the political leadership to the masses of the people. It does not merely transform these ideas into shapes and language that the people are able to absorb. A mass party of this kind is the sole means by which the developing consciousness of the people can be translated into such forms as to make the people themselves conscious of what it is they want, of the possibilities and the limitations of their desires. And that's taken from the book Party Politics in the West Indies, written in 1962. And this rather profound quotation tells us that our role as a political party is not simply to contest and win elections, as most classic definitions of the political party would suggest, but instead that our party should facilitate the development of a consciousness among our membership and indeed among the supporters of our party, if our understanding of party affiliation is given its widest interpretation. Against this background, one would assume that the Caribbean political party should be organized to facilitate the development of this consciousness. However, that is sadly not the case with most political organizations in the Caribbean today. Another outstanding Caribbean scholar who is no longer with us, Dr. Patrick Emmanuel, commented on the Caribbean Party, and he said, and I quote, that the Caribbean experience encompasses stable macro parties of long life and electoral success, defection, merger and alliance, as well as a plethora of micro parties of short duration and no success. Caribbean parties have also varied considerably with respect to the possession of personal and institutional charisma, levels of formal and informal organization, and the ideological bent of policies proclaimed and actualized. And that's taken from his book, Elections and Party Systems, 1992, written in 1992. So what Pat Emanuel's critique of the Caribbean political party says is interesting, especially as he was assessing the slightly more contemporary experience of the Caribbean party, and he was clearly struck by the extent to which these organizations were electoral machines that relied heavily on transitory attributes such as personal and institutional charisma. Implicitly, he is agreeing with James, who wrote 30 years before him, that our parties are for the most part preoccupied with attaining and maintaining government, but we have largely forgotten our responsibility to convey consciousness to our people. So I wouldn't stand here tonight and tell you that I think the Democratic Labour Party is a perfect political party. Certainly we are not perfect by any far stretch of the imagination. However, I am confident that this political party that I have the honor of leading has gone further than most parties in this important task of building a consciousness. And I am confident about this, and I believe that we have done well, considering the fact that we are one of the younger political parties in the region. The Democratic Labour Party emerged from the Barbados Labour Party in 1955 and is therefore considerably younger than the grand old political parties in the Caribbean, such as the PNM, the ALP, the JLP, the PNP, which survive in their original configuration. Notwithstanding this short life, we have already made considerable progress along the path towards infusing the type of consciousness that CLR James spoke about. And we've done so in several ways that are worth articulating. First, the Democratic Labour Party acquired this home sometime in the 1970s. I don't know the exact date. Perhaps somebody in the audience can tell me of that. Who would have been of the vintage to remember that? And that was after we sold our original building in Roebuck Street. And the acquisition of this property was due to the efforts and vision of our founder, the Right Excellent Earl Walton Barrow. He believed that this party needed a home, but moreover, that our home should be a special place that members can assemble, and that our physical surroundings should be conducive to cultural expression, learning, and social intercourse. In short, our home should have a life of its own, and I think that you will agree with me that our home, which is familiarly known as George Street, has over the years taken on a life of its own, whether or not we have been in office. We have hosted numerous annual conferences, meetings, and political functions, but have also made our facility here available to host cultural, religious, and educational functions, which I believe is also important to the development of this consciousness or awareness that CLR James argued is vital to the development of the Caribbean political party. When we built this auditorium in opposition, with no money, there was no Frank Coleman Hall or Grand Salle. There was no Sherburne Center, but there was the auditorium. And we offered this facility to persons regardless of their political affiliation, because we are interested in the development of this nation's people and believe that this was one way that we could make a contribution thereto. I believe that when we opened this auditorium, that the late Sir Dighton Ward, the Governor General of Barbados, attended the opening of this auditorium, which tells you how it was viewed in the context of Barbadian political development. And this auditorium wasn't open only for our party. Yes, we were taking some hot sun and we were spending a lot of money at our annual conferences, so we invested in this building. But when it was launched, the first committee, which was headed by the late Chalmers St. Hill, and of which Daphne Joseph Hackett was the secretary, I was a member, we set about the task of bringing regional artists here. We brought Paul Keynes Douglas, we brought Louise Bennett, and we also sought to unveil a plaque in this auditorium in memory of the late Jackie Opal. Never forget that this party was brutalized in the newspaper for putting up that plaque, because apparently there was some money in some bank account somewhere that people had collected for the building of an auditorium in memory of Jackie Opal. And there were people who were peddling it publicly that we were hoping to get that money by renaming this auditorium after Jackie Opal, which was never our intention. But it shows how difficult it can be sometimes to sell good works to people who don't want to listen or whose own predilection is in another direction. But this auditorium was built for that purpose. It's not used enough for that purpose. It does not look good enough right now for the purpose for which it was built, or even for a modern political organization. And it can hardly be a difficult task to bring this auditorium up to the standard which would make all of us feel proud, because it is one way in which we can make a contribution to this party. But even before this auditorium was built, that little building that we have there was used by the Democratic League of Youth. Any night you came here, it was used by community organizations, Seven Stars Club from Tweedside Road. All kinds of youth groups came here and met, and this facility was an active facility that brought us as members of the party and our political leadership into contact with a wide variety of citizens of Barbados. So I trust you will forgive me for being overtly political on this occasion, but it is noteworthy that the other political organization located in Roebuck Street does not open their facility in this way. And even though they can boast of being around for nearly 70 years, we also know that their home is a sterile, lifeless administrative headquarters that can do nothing to help inculcate any consciousness in their membership. The importance of our home to the development of our consciousness cannot be underestimated, since this is the place to which one retreats when political adversity sets in. And hence, after 1976, when the Democratic Labour Party lost office, and after Barrow completed his lecture tour, he descended on this facility, our home, trowel in hand, and proceeded to assist the artisans who built this structure. Over the years, we've built a community here, and while we endured political adversity, we would take solace and seek refreshment at the Unity Bar, where political intercourse, even heightened political intercourse, is always permitted and sometimes well into the night. I'm convinced that to this day, these walls and the community that has been created herein has helped us to weather the political storms that plagued this party for the past 14 years, since while we have had political differences, we were constantly reminded that this is a community to which we belong, and regardless of how dysfunctional we might be at times, we are still a family, and this is our home. Naturally, George Street was also the place to gather when the refreshing results of the elections on the 15th of January started to come in. But because it is our home, that is why we need to spend some time, as I said, making sure that it is also a mirror of how we feel as a political institution. And an active program needs to be undertaken here at headquarters to refurbish our facilities, and as I said, to make sure that this auditorium becomes a modern facility. This, where we are located, is prime commercial property, and we need to develop it to an extent that it is self-financing, and also that it contributes not only in creating jobs, but also can give something back to this political institution. And I believe various committees have been set up. One is currently under the direction of Senator Peter Gills. And just as we've relaunched the Sir James Tudor Institute tonight, I look forward soon to being able to come here to the relaunching of a fully refurbished and modern auditorium at George Street. But in addition to the physical community, there are also other components of the political party that have helped us to build the political consciousness that has set us apart from other political organizations in the Caribbean. and tonight we are gathered to commemorate one such institution. The James Tudor Institute of Politics is the rebranded and rehanced Academy of Politics, which had its origins, I believe, in a 1974. I understood from the literature sometime in the early 70s, perhaps even as early as 1971, initiative of the late Right Excellent Earl Walter Barrow, which was then taken and transformed into something by Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford. Sir Lloyd quite rightly appreciated the need to nurture the political consciousness of the party by establishing an academic institution that would focus on politics and political issues and complement the work of the Democratic Labour Party in and out of office. A principal, Mr. Dighton Griffith, who I spoke about earlier, a distinguished former principal in the educational system and after whom the Dighton Griffith School has been named, was identified, and several public lectures were given under this umbrella that exposed members, friends and supporters to important political issues. It is significant that this academy is without equal in the region, since I know of no other political party in this region that has adopted such a structure for political education of this nature. Just as I would say, I know of no other political party that has invested in an auditorium. So we have a good history of building this party as a political institution, and we need to continue to work on it. I also need to stress that the Academy has never and will never treat political education as a selfish endeavor, but is committed to an open door concept. And in this regard, I now issue an invitation to those who supported us to join with those who voted against us to pursue knowledge whenever and wherever the Institute of Politics pitches its tent. As I said earlier, the James Tudor Institute emerged from the original Academy of Politics concept, not only because we wanted to pay tribute to this intellectual powerhouse that was a man called James Cameron Tudor, but also because we felt that a rebranded academy would better facilitate our program to enhance political consciousness. We therefore determined that the James Tudor Institute would leave our home in George Street and go far and wide across Barbados into far-flung villages and towns that also need to be part of our program of education, but which may find difficulty in coming to the city. This was our intention before, and we remain committed to this mode of education. Hence, those of you who live in the country and seek knowledge on politics and government should stay tuned, because the James Tudor Institute of Politics is coming your way soon. The concept of a virtual and mobile institute is but one of the innovations that we plan for the James Tudor Academy over the next few years. In addition to this practical adaptation, we also plan to make full use of the internet as well as electronic media to achieve the goals of the Academy. There is no reason why our program, intended to raise political consciousness, needs to be confined to public lectures and discussion. It is our intention that where possible, 2 radio, television and internet facilities will be exploited as far as practicable. In addition, we will explore the possibility of taking our program of education across the region, which is consistent with the direction of the CSME, and where possible seek to bring regional speakers styled as the faculty of the Institute to Barbados to enhance our program of education. As you would imagine, our program of topics will be wide and varied, giving the broadest possible interpretation to the word politics. Hence, we will touch on issues related to our policies and programs while we are in office, which I expect will be a very long time. But God willing. But you can also expect offerings that are at variance with our policies, and this is entirely acceptable. Our institute is about sharing ideas, expressing views, learning from experts and practitioners. So in all of this, there's ample room for disagreement and even dissent. It would be useful at this point to make clear that the Sir James Tudor Institute is not about party propaganda. Party propaganda, properly defined, is the calculated manipulation of symbols, including words, so as to change an audience or population's attitudes and behavior in designed directions. Naturally, there is a role for this type of activity in normal political intercourse. However, the Academy is not about propaganda. It is about education and about elevating the consciousness of the people of Barbados that the Democratic Labour Party serves each day. Up to now, the Academy has lacked structure and its attendees have not been certified in any way, and that is unfortunate. You can therefore expect that the types of structures that are normally associated with an institute of this nature will also be forthcoming shortly. We have identified a new principal and an academic board that will determine what the institute will offer, when and where. In addition, we will quickly move to address the matter of certification, so that persons who attend one session of the Institute would have their participation recognized, and moreover that persons attending a series of sessions would receive a diploma or some sort that recognizes their participation in our program of public education. As I seek to introduce you to the rebranded James Tudor Institute, it is important that I distinguish it from other regular activities in which the Democratic Labour Party engages. One such is the weekly Friday lunchtime lecture series, which has become an important part of our lives of late. This initiative has helped to stimulate interest in the Democratic Labour Party while it was in opposition, and I am pleased to see that it continues each week over lunch. I want to thank those persons involved, particularly Comrade Besley Maycock and Comrade Astor Burley Watts, for the contribution that they have made and continue to make in that regard, along with all of the others, Patsy Straker, and there's so many others who have helped with the success of the program. That forum is intended to be light, so as not to interfere with your meal. But since there are no meals planned for the Academy's activities, then you can expect those lectures to be a little heavier. Although I see them getting a lot of food ready in the back there. And I know that it has been part of the tradition, one of the things that we would have inherited, this generation of politicians from former Democratic Labour Party leadership, was the fact that once we got together we should break bread and at least have a drink of some sort. And it's not true to say that in the Democratic Labour Party that women have been relegated to the role of frying fish cakes and making conkeys, because for all of the years that I was a young Democrat in this party, an active young Democrat, the people who did the cooking were the men. When the Young Democrats had parties, Arabaro used to bring the pilau, or you could go by Canitude and get a leg of pork ready cooked. So that is another allegation or attempt at propaganda which will not stick. But we socialized. That's how we got to know each other. And that's how Haldane Dotting put on so much weight in those days. He lost it since then. But no, we really socialized in this headquarters when executive council meetings were finished, no matter how testy the meeting and the difficult issues we had, we resolved differences downstairs with a drink and a few fish cakes, and we chatted and talked, and people developed strong personal relationships and friendships which have endured certainly during that time. It is my hope that both of these activities will continue. meaning certainly the lunchtime lecture series, and both will be successful along with the James Tudor Institute. And I will also note here that both are open to the public regardless of party affiliation. Finally, I want to say a few words about the individual after whom this institute is named, Sir James Tudor. I don't think that I have heard a better public speaker in my lifetime. His political judgment was impeccable. When I first went to the secondary school I know there are a lot of people who don't like me to say what secondary school I went to, so I wouldn't. There was a gentleman there by the name of Harry Seeley, who in the first few occasions would take you to the back of the school hall and show you the 1955 cricket team and show you pictures of outstanding commemorations, and you did an orientation. It wasn't official, but you were oriented into the greatness of the institution which you had joined. When you joined the Democratic Labour Party, you agree with that? That's okay. That's right. When you joined the Democratic Labour Party, Sir James Cameron Trudeau, he wasn't Sir James then, would summon you to Stanmore Terrace. And there he would orient you, find out a bit about you, make some suggestions, write recommendations. Again, there was an element of orientation, some would say indoctrination, settling you into the institution that he took almost as his personal responsibility. His political judgment was on most occasions impeccable. He had a fine sense of humor, was a good mentor and friend, and he was respected by many Barbadians. Sir James was also a man of enormous intellect, and it is therefore appropriate that this institute that seeks to enhance and feed the intellectual yearning of our friends and supporters should carry his name. I am confident that our activities will be to the credit of his good name. And comrades and friends, this relaunch of the James Tudor Institute of Politics fits squarely with our goal as a party in government to reach out to and involve the public of Barbados in the governing and the governance of our country. When months ago we introduced the concept of constituency councils, several persons assumed the notion of this being a dispensary for the derivatives of pork barrel politics. I have had the good fortune to review the draft legislation as well as the report of the project advisory team, who spent several months painstakingly gathering information and formulating a concept befitting a government formed by the Democratic Labour Party. And I am pleased to assure you tonight that the draft model achieves the stated objective of bringing government closer to the people. Once that model is approved by Cabinet and Parliament, the people of Barbados can expect to have in their own backyards a forum for addressing the perennial problems of social isolation, economic marginalization, political apathy, and tardy responses to doing the people's business. The James Tudor Institute of Politics will no doubt help the constituency councils to rekindle an interest in politics among our youth, remind them that it is a noble profession, and ensure that the future of this country remains in good hands. Furthermore, this party in government also established a governance committee which has done a remarkable job in 8 months to come up with several pieces of draft legislation addressing such issues as freedom of information, integrity in public office, and amendments to the Defamation Act. That committee is chaired by Independent Senator Orlando Marvel. All combined, this package of initiatives, including the relaunch of this institute, go to the heart of our desire to create in Barbados a framework for the dissemination of relevant knowledge the heightening of awareness, the participation of ordinary Barbadians in the decision-making process, and the relentless pursuit of the objectives that motivated us to seek independence in 1966. As we approach the 50th anniversary of our independence, we need to ensure that all the steps on the pathway to progress are in place. And this institute, in my estimation, is one of the most important stepping stones to the vision of Barbados that is enshrined in our Constitution, I mean our party's Constitution, as just in freedom, just in the sight of the law, just in equal opportunity, and just in social relations. I want to congratulate Comrade Besley Maycock and the team associated with the relaunch of this institute. I commend this forum to all Barbadians in the hope that together we can be informed and enlightened on the best pathways for taking our country and our region forward. I thank you.